You're on the Six Screens Network, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in to another rockin' awesome night, as we say here. My name's Rick Ferrin. I'm up here in Boston, Massachusetts, and this is where we channel all the Six Screens live programs through. And we have a very good program coming up for you next. Of course, it's called Watchtower Insider. Barbara Anderson Speaks Out. Now, I have to tell you, she's had some really good programs, but she's got an ex-Jehovah's Witness, Preston Simmons. He's coming on here tonight, and Preston is getting a lot of attention all day long. People are waiting for Preston to come in, and he's an ex-Bethelite, and he no longer is there. He let them know he wanted to be disassociated, but he'll get into all of that. And I know it's going to grab a lot of attention. So if you're just listening in, stay with us. I don't want you to go anywhere. You'll miss a very good program if you miss tonight's. So let's bring Barbara on first. Say hello to Barbara, see how she's doing tonight. Hello, Barbara.
Hello, Rick, and hi, everybody.
Well, you're looking good tonight as usual. I mean, what, you just come back from the gym or what?
I don't tell my secrets, Rick.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you look good, my goodness. Now,
come on here, Rick, just for that compliment.
Yes. So we've got. Well, I want you to introduce this man. I'm going to bring him on. You tell us a little bit about your guest. Go ahead.
Okay, Preston Simmons is going to tell us about something that began in 1991. Well, I know what I was doing in 1991. I was in the writing department. Oh, I'm going to brag here. I was in the writing department. I was working on what became the Proclaimers book, Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimers of God's Kingdom. I was working on trying to prove that there was a channel from Jesus Christ to Charles Taze Russell, and it was God's channel. By the way, never could prove that. Absolutely, it wasn't. No such animal. And the Watchtower quit saying it after that. Now, 91 was a very important year in Preston Simmons' life. He is a fifth-generation witness. I'm a first-generation witness. So he had a lot of a rich background in this, lots of relatives who impressed him about Jehovah's Witnesses. So since I know what I was doing, how about, Preston, you tell him what your mother was doing in 1991?
Well, we're not going to talk about the first half of 1991, but the second half of 1991, she was giving birth to me. So
33 years ago, right? That's how old
33
you are.
years.
Yeah.
And I think on my mom's side, it's the fifth generation. On my dad's side, I am second or third. My granny converted to Jehovah's Witnesses when he was 8 years old. So I lived a normal JW life up until I got to Bethel. I started pioneering at 17 or 18.
How do you say that? Normal life until you got to Bethel.
Normal JW life. You know, it wasn't anything crazy. Although I've been thinking about it after reading through my story again, because I forgot so many things until I went back and read what I sent you.
2 hours, you know.
Okay, I'll be quick. But
No. You can just say a lot in 2 hours, and you had a very interesting, that's a word we always use, 33 years. But going to Bethel, and that was important. But when were you baptized?
I was baptized in 2008.
Yeah. And 18 years old?
Yep.
Yeah. So you and I have something in common. You're from Dallas, Texas.
I am.
Yeah, well, that's where my husband was, pioneering in Dallas, Texas. After we married, of course, I'm a Long Island girl, but after we married, we went to Dallas, Texas, many, many times. So we kind of know similar people who, from my generation, are gone because they were older when we would go there. But my husband had a lot of a close friends. From there, he went to Bethel. He fought the draft in Dallas with the the whole issue of the military, and he won. And he got his minister's qualification, whatever they call it. So, so what we were doing in Dallas, and you guys later on, while your parents were active witnesses in Dallas. So I asked you who you knew in Dallas that was at Bethel, and you mentioned John and Marie Gibbard.
Yep.
Yeah. Who are deceased, right?
I believe so. It's that latter half of my Fishkill medical career. I couldn't keep straight who was and wasn't there.
Yeah, well, they'd be pretty ancient. John, if they were alive. John Gibbard was in the military when he became, somehow or other, through Marie, meeting Marie, and she was a witness, daughter of a very influential witness in Dallas a long time ago. And so eventually, well, John Gibbard, and I'm going to talk about this because I want you all to see the real people, just real people living their lives as Jehovah's Witnesses. And John Gibbard became an excellent witness. He was a congregation servant. Eventually, he ended up in Bethel with Marie. My husband pioneered with Marie, with many of the other folk there. And Marie was a proofreader in the writing department. So I got to see her, and John Gibbard was in the service department. So these were very influential. Eventually, in my world, they were influential witnesses. But in your world, they were probably maybe before you went into the medical department. They were in the medical department as seniors needing care, right?
Yeah. We were encouraged not to call them patients, but we called them, I forget what the word was. They had some other non-medical term, but we'll get into why that is later on.
A senile.
Well, I can't comment on the state of their mind.
So we're going to talk a lot about this medical department. And I had dealings with that medical department in Brooklyn. It was fascinating. I might tell that one time because there was some really crazy stuff going on in that medical department in Brooklyn. And I don't believe I've ever really told it. I ended up in the sick. I ended up sick. The second year I was at Bethel. And so instead of going home, they kept us because they needed my husband.
Yeah, that's common.
That's right. So I was one of those. I was also one of those menopausal women. So many special people were brought into Bethel because they had these marvelous careers, and they were needed at Bethel because of their expertise. And my husband was one of them. And so the strangest part about all of that was the age. And these women, the wives of the men, were all in menopausal age. And if that wasn't interesting, I bet you could talk about some of that because, we went on in menopausal age. We had problems. So I tell it like it is, but I never have told the experience of how I changed the medical department in Brooklyn because of what happened. And I'll save that for another time, but I did. In fact, one of the people, who in the world is calling me? One of the people in very important man in Bethel told our son that he said, wasn't for your mother, we would have never found out how badly the department was being run. So so we're going to hear about how goodly or badly it was run after Brooklyn closed their medical department, and all the care was up there in Fishkill, New York. And so that was kind of like the nearest city towards
Yeah, technically.
Addison. Yeah, and also
Technically, we were Wappingers Falls. So we had a Wappingers Falls address, but Beacon Fishkill was right there, and then half of us were over in Newburgh on the other side of the bridge, which was a fun experience.
Oh, you're going to share it with us. So the Wallkill, Warwick, what was that place called? Jersey or something? Tuxedo.
Tuxedo. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going by my memory. Fishkill was near there, and Watchtower was running their organization in parts of all of these small, what you call them, towns?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had spread out. I got to see more of it because of my time in the furniture department. So Tuxedo was a place that I commonly went to because we stored a lot of our furniture there. Furniture had its basic setup out of Tuxedo. They consolidated the entire thing into Fishkill, and so there was no more Patterson furniture department or Brooklyn furniture department or Wallkill furniture department. It was all just Fishkill furniture. And so in the latter half of the time I spent in that department, we were in the process of consolidating everything.
How many people when you were there? You went in to Bethel. What was it? 14.
Yeah, 14 July.
Yeah. Okay. So about how many people do you recall were in the facilities around there?
There was approximately 1,800 in Patterson. Brooklyn was in its scale down phase, so that number was constantly fluctuating. Wallkill, I have no idea. And then I think at that point, Warwick in the construction phase was approximately somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500. I think. Don't quote me on that last number. It seems ridiculous.
That was
but that's the number I remember.
A surprise question. I really had never thought about how many. Wait, just hold on. What?
Your whole sound system is echoing. Robin called. She said she can't get your making noises.
The phone was ringing and ringing here. She said the sound system from Rick's place is.
It isn't yours?
No, I don't know.
Oh, you're not on. You're not on.
I'm on right now. I'm on right now.
With Rick?
Yes, I'm talking to Preston right now.
Well, what's Robin talking about?
I have no idea. But she's watching this on the phone, her phone, and she's saying it's not clear.
Yeah.
Well.
Papa, this is Rick here at the control panel. It's going to be on her end. I have people monitoring the sound system on the telephone and radio, and there's no problems. I just checked it on YouTube and Facebook, so it's going to be on her end for some reason. So don't you worry about it.
It might be her. Well, there's nothing we can do. He checked it. He said it was working all right. It could be on her phone.
It's her phone.
Yeah.
So, but
you can't call her back right now. No.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Maybe she'll call back.
Okay. So we got we don't have any problems as far as Rick is concerned, but one person does. Now that was my husband. He's monitoring all of this. So So let's start off. What we're going to discuss is medical care, but first, furniture care.
You want
So
me to skip over laundry?
yeah. Oh, laundry care. Okay. Well, there's all these departments at headquarters taking care of a few thousand people. It was like when Wallkill, when I went to Bethel, between Wallkill and Brooklyn, there were 4,000 people. So
Between all three complexes?
just Wallkill and
Goodness gracious.
Brooklyn. And then,
Okay.
of course, they had a deal in New Jersey. Some people in a farming area. They had a farming area down in Florida, so they counted some of that. But we used a figure of 4,000, and that was 80s. Okay. So you were. Let's start from baptized. When were you baptized?
I was baptized when I was 18 years old, so I think that's 08.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I did ask you that. Now we're going to go into your Bethel experience. What made you want to go to Bethel?
So when I was 12, for some strange reason, I remember going to a return visit with my dad, and this sweet old lady looked at me and said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I guess I had just watched a Young People Ask video or something. I have no idea. But my response was, "I'm going to go to Bethel." And I don't know how that got in my 12-year-old little brain, but it just sat there for quite some time, spinning in the background. I completely forgot about it. And then a circuit overseer came through when I was about 16 or 17. And it was his first visit. He looked at me, and the first thing he said is, "You look like a Bethelite." And I was looking for some sort of identification to stand into. Like I had no thing that I was. So when he said, "You look like a Bethelite," I said, "Good enough, let's do it." And from there, I just moved into doing everything I could to get to Bethel. I didn't get there at 18 or 19 because that was the age. I got there, I think
That's
I was
right,
22, 23.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a minute to get there.
And you were assigned where?
I was assigned to the laundry department,
Okay.
which made my mother's day because as a child, I never did laundry. My room was piles of laundry everywhere. And so she got a kick out of that.
Yeah, I bet you did. She said, they'll whip him in shape.
Exactly. But it was like they needed so many people in that department because they had started Warwick. And so Warwick didn't have its own laundry facilities. The Walk Hill laundry facility was under a water restriction. And so they couldn't do as much because they couldn't dump the water afterwards. And then Brooklyn I had already shut down its laundry department. In fact, I had friends from Duncanville, which is South Dallas area, already come back because Brooklyn had shut down and all that fancy equipment that we saw in that one video was now, useless, just sitting there.
Oh, well, that sounds like Bethel.
Yeah.
Try that.
In the furniture department, we had a joke. We didn't call us the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. We were the Watchtower Bible and Do It Again Society of Pennsylvania because of how many times they had us remove everything. Move that over there. Move that over there. No, move it back. No, move it back one more time. We started here. Why are we doing this? That was classic.
Hey, it almost sounds like the belief system.
Indeed. We're just going to go around theologically into a circle until we get right back to where we started.
That's exactly the way it goes.
Pyramidology.
We're not going to make fun. It's true.
No, I'm telling you, pyramidology is making a comeback. Just wait. Just wait.
Well, they removed that, that.
Yeah, they have.
There anymore.
Removed it and covered it up.
Put something else. Okay. Well, at least they didn't stand still. They were an organization that was. Would you call it progressive?
Interesting word. Would I call the organization progressive? Yes and no. It depends on the subject. It really does. because there are moments where they are completely ossified in whatever thought process they want. And when enough of us leave over the issue, then they'll think about making a change.
That's right.
But normally they want to stay exactly where they are. It's we didn't progress when I was in it until somebody died, and the person that had control over it passes away. Okay, cool. We can move forward in this. And that's too slow for me.
Yeah, that's very true. Progressive has many meanings at Bethel, so and everybody listening understands that basically. The organization as a whole, even when you're not associated, know nothing about headquarters, you realize that on the outside because of so many the changes which they say is progressive, but some of the things are certainly difficult, very, very difficult over the years, and caused people to leave the organization. But now you came in as a full of zeal, and
Indeed.
And you went to the laundry, grueling shifts is what I remember you telling me.
Yeah, they so because Patterson was only set up to handle at max 1,200 people's laundry. So if you consider the fact that we were dealing with the Walk Hill linen because of their water disposal issue, Brooklyn had nothing, so we were taking all their stuff. We were handling all of the stuff at Patterson and handling all the stuff at Warwick. We were running about at a 600% capacity from the maximum. So we were doing about 700 people, 7,000 people's clothes per cycle. And so I think the normal cycle was a week, and you try to get that many people's clothes taken care of within that period of time, which was absolutely insane. So the schedule that they had us on was a first schedule, which was basically days. Then you had from 5 to, I think it was 2, or there was some overlap there. I don't exactly remember what the overlap was. And then night shift, which would take us all the way back to 8. So Patterson Laundry never shut down. But instead of putting us on a nice little linear process where we would go days, evening, nights, and let our circadian rhythm gently drift through the 12 to 24-hour cycle, they would constantly take us back and forth between being on days and then being on evenings, and then being on days and then being on nights, and then being back on days, because they wanted to make sure that our spirituality was kept up. We couldn't let somebody not get morning worship for more than a month at a time, because when we were on shift, we were not listening to morning worship. I have about 1,000 photos in my Google account of guys sleeping through morning worship, which
oh my goodness,
was
is that
hysterical.
why they were sleeping?
Yeah, we would go. There's a little room in Patterson right next to
even in Brooklyn, you'd see the young guys just sitting at the table sleeping.
Yep. There was one guy, a good friend of mine, who he was the first guinea pig to go through the entire cycle. And by the end of the 2 years, he was at the point where he was on nights and falling asleep at his press. So if you can imagine this giant like steam thing that like comes up and pushes down on clothing, he would be sitting there with his hand on the machine, pressing a piece of clothing, just knocked out, standing and awake. Or standing and asleep. It was crazy. It wasn't safe. I don't recommend it.
But it got done. It got done all because the Holy Spirit was there, and it got done. So I'm making fun because we all made fun of our world. We just did, and we couldn't change it. Everybody had an experience that was worth talking about. So yours is really worth talking about. Those shifts and those sleep patterns destroyed. You went through all that. It's amazing that you still look 33. I mean, after what you went through.
Yeah, if you see my dad, he looks 28, and he's 56. So I just hope I inherited those genetics. That's the only thing keeping me young.
No, you do it well. You do it well.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that.
I had when I first saw you and knew you had that beard. I know you didn't go to Bethel with it.
No, but I grew it in Bethel. Like I was full rebel by the end. I was like, y'all can't tell me what to do.
No.
I'm done. Yeah. Because when you're on adjusted work schedule, you get away with murder. Like my room was not clean. I had a beard. I remember I walked in one day. This was when I was in the infirmary, and I walked in. We had our little stand up. I walked out. I start walking down the hall to my first patient, and I hear the nurse go, "Are we going to talk about how Preston just walked in here with a beard?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. We're good."
Well, you were ahead of the times. I mean,
well, the Watchtower had already came out on it. That was the thing. We had that. What was that article? Dressing rooming that like God approves or something like that. And it's the one that said beards are good. And I'm like, beards are good. Let's go. And I was in furniture at that point, and I argued with every overseer I had. I argued with my coordinators. I argued with my roommates. I was receiving random threats like, if you do it, you're gonna make me do it. I'm like, do what? Like having that conversation with my oversight. So that was annoying as all get out. And because I was a face of Patterson Bethel, I don't know if you know about like the culture that existed, I guess from the 90s and beyond. But Patterson is like the golden child of Bethel.
Well, yeah, I was in engineering, and they inherited that property, didn't know what to do with it, and then all of a sudden they decided to make it an educational center. And so I was on that team, actually, the Patterson team, architectural team. So I heard a lot about Patterson. It was very interesting. You mentioned water. I want to say to people, tell us a little bit about the water problems in that area.
The water problems?
Yeah, that's an area that you don't have a lot of water. Faucet water. They had to make ponds or something.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this, so I'm speaking outside of my depth on this. But from my understanding, when you drive upstate New York, I forget what that road is. It's like 70 something. You end up having a lot of these stock ponds that actually are the ponds that feed New York City. And so if you pollute those ponds, there's huge fines associated with it. So you can't just dump water. You have to be very, very specific. If you ever get a Warwick Bethelite on, they were dealing with that like crazy because anytime they had to do anything, it was a whole hugabaloo to get anything done, which on top of their normal hugabaloo meant that everything was about 100 times more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the reasons in that area there's not a lot of population because of the water issues. So your situation, you saw water because you saw laundry, but you were actually in the drying department. Now, why would I even bring this up? People are going, is this important? But it was important to you. How did you keep your spirituality up when you were under the gun all the time with the changes in your work schedule, and every shift change got harder and harder?
I actually think that was a major contributing factor to me waking up, because you can only pay so much attention when you were being just dragged through the mud continually. Mm-hmm. And then I was also there when they decided that morning worship was no longer mandatory, which I think if they wanted to keep people fully indoctrinated, you need to keep morning worship a thing. I
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because it was mandatory when we were there.
Yep. I was there during when I was in furniture department. I believe they shut it down because there were two major announcements that they had while I was there. The first one was the 25% reduction, which freaked every Bethelite out ever. Like I remember that day, everybody just kind of stood around in the Patterson lobby and they didn't know what to do because basically 1 out of 4 was going home. And then the other one was when they said, "Hey, we're not we're not doing morning worship anymore. You're taking it in your room. We're making these commissary things where
I
you go get
see.
food. Yeah.
Oh, that's when they had
That-
the commissary thing. We had heard about it. Well, when I was there, the statement that I heard was that 75% of the 75% of the Bethel family turned over every year, but it was basically the young men, because 75% of Bethel in those years, and because of the press room publishing house, were young men, and so it was very difficult to keep everybody happy, and you had this constant turnover. Many young men left Bethel very embittered, and others loved every moment of it, but some hated, depending upon the job and depending upon who your overseer was. If you had a rotten overseer,
100%.
yeah,
100%. My laundry overseer was fantastic. He made up for the fact that Bethel did not care about us. Like, I probably would have been out a lot sooner if he wasn't such a caring man. He was constantly walking through at 3 o'clock in the morning, making sure that we were awake, because we weren't. We were sleeping. But yeah, he, out of all of the people that I think about in that organization, he's one that I respect a lot. I hate that he's stuck in it. I wish that he has the same freedom that we have. Yeah. Because the further you climb up in that organization, the more likely it is that when you do see what it is, you're not going to respond to it. Like, there are people that directly told me, hey, I need you to stop asking me these questions, because I stopped thinking about these questions a long time ago. So
exactly, because you have nowhere to go.
Mm-mm.
And you have a life there that a group of people you associate with all the time, so you try to make it a good life, and you don't think about the beliefs. So of course I had to think about the beliefs because of the department I was in.
Right.
Yeah, but then there was people who didn't agree with each other in the running department.
That's super interesting, because after I left, before I put in my disassociation letter, I had a friend who there was a group of us that would like hide away and talk about theology in my last department. And he wrote in one of my questions to the writing department, and the writing department guy said, "Oh, I need you to resend this email, but send it to this address." And it was a mass blast of the entire writing department. I think it might have even included service department. It was like one of those emails that's going to hit 1,000 people. And he's like, "No, I'm good. I'm not going to submit this questionable question that Preston gave me to everybody." We talked it out. It sounds like there's a division, at least there was at that point, which I think was around 2018, that we were having some sort of discussion / argument within the writing department, trying to figure out some basic theological issues.
They didn't know which way to go.
No,
it really didn't.
It's all 1914 stuff too. So
yeah. See, it's just look at all in the 90s, all the changes. Do you think that came easy? The business of the sheep and dividing the sheep and the goats. I discussed the last time I was on some of the major changes that went on, and they changed doctrines that were in effect for 60, 70 years. So they were all trying to get it together. It wasn't easy, but you wonder why. You really wonder why was all of this. They said it was because they were searching for truth, but I don't picture other religions going through all of this. I mean, they have a certain standard of what their belief system is, and they kind of stick to it, and they don't manipulate and argue and whatever, except when they get into trouble, like some of the churches on child abuse. That's a totally different story, but we're talking about the religious beliefs. But Watchtower was always getting themselves into trying to explain themselves away on this issue and explain a new teaching on this issue. and it was for young people. I could see why so many were disenchanted.
Yeah.
at Bethel, you know.
I mean, and when you look at, I make this joke all the time. When you start off with pyramidology and happen to get one right with 1914, you got to ride 1914 till it dies, and
Exactly.
it's past the point where it's died.
Yeah.
When you got past 100 years, now you have to start rewriting your theology,
Exactly.
and I think that's what they're in the process of doing.
Uh-huh. I agree with you. Absolutely, they're rewriting the whole religion. When you do that, though, you either can do it because most of your associates, not members, associates have died off, and there's nobody there to critique you, and so you got maybe some new people. But where are the new people? Either they make the religion so attractive to new people that they knocking down the door to get in, but that's not happening. It's just not happening. So we could talk about that, but we all know we see that is happening because of all the changes made. Now you were in laundry, and then you become a PBCA. You were a Patterson Bethel certified and PCA.
Yes.
Patient care assistant.
Yes.
Do you have a background in this?
I had no medical background, and so what a PCA did was basically, I think if you were to put it in normal medical profession speak, that's a nursing tech or a patient assistant. So that's what I did when laundry had to give somebody up. So PCAs were given to the infirmary in Patterson on a part-time basis, and I was one of the people offered up for that wonderful job.
Mm-hmm. How many people in the PCA? How many?
In Patterson, I don't know.
Well,
That's actually a really good question because they had us on 6-week shifts, and it wouldn't surprise me knowing, like, I'm not going to do the math here because I'm not that quick, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was about 100 of us spread out over the entire complex. It might have been as low as 50, though.
I mean, you guys weren't there to offer medical assistance and somebody cut themselves and they have to go to the infirmary. Your primary job was taking care of who?
Old people.
Old people. Like, if I was at Bethel, they would be trying to take care of me. They'd be trying to.
If you were at Bethel right now, you would be in the RCA apartments, at least unless they've changed it. And you would be enjoying a Rivercrest apartment all to yourself.
And that is in
Fishkill, Wappingers Falls, Beacon.
Oh yeah.
They say the fun statement about Beacon is that it's the new Brooklyn, and so that's both a worldly saying and a witness saying that Beacon is the new Brooklyn.
Interesting.
You go to Beacon, it's witnesses everywhere. That's where my sister still is.
Oh. Well, let's talk about the care, and why don't we talk about the apartment building? I heard some striking, to me it was, information a few years ago, and I was just dumbstruck. So, did they have a license to run a nursing home?
No, not that. And I was only given this information kind of through hush-hush backdoor stuff. But we got into a situation where the neighbors were complaining about us speeding when we were driving up. So to give you an idea of what Fishkill is, and I wish I had a map because it would help tremendously. But imagine all of this is regular RCA apartments, and RCA is where the housing was for the Bethelites in Wappingers Falls, Fishkill. And then you have normal non-Bethelites living right here. And then down here, you have this apartment complex that is actually a nursing home. And so we would drive right past all of our neighbors and the speed bumps couldn't stop us. We were flying. Um, and they would get really, really upset with us. Like they'd be walking their dogs, telling us to slow down and such. So we got in trouble for that. And then we learned that the reason why we got in so much trouble for that was because technically we don't want a inspector, a medical or a health inspector to come around because they could shut us down if they came through. And so there was this discussion on how you need to drive slower and then don't wear your scrubs outside of the building. In fact, we might be getting rid of scrubs completely, but don't wear them.
You had to
And
change into your scrubs inside the building. You couldn't walk if you're a nurse. You didn't walk in looking like a nurse because it was looked like an apartment building, and they didn't have a license to be a nursing home.
nope, in Dutchess County, you're either allowed 12 or 13 within that county, and they were one over. So the fact that they had medical personnel and they had nurses and they had doctors and all the things were happening was illegal at that point in time, and that was something that the overseers and the governing body was fighting it. Like they were fighting each other about it. I would get little tidbits coming in from certain elders who would let me know what was happening in the back room, and what the governing body wanted. The overseers were like, nope, we don't know how to run that. We're not going to run that. We're going to run a infirmary. And what they wanted was a wellness center, because a wellness center was legal. A infirmary was not. And so there was miscommunications across the board about what to set up, how to set it up. It was not a smooth process, but that's what happens when you try to exit Brooklyn in a flash and make a 600 to 700 man department just pop up out of the ground in 3 to 6 months. It's chaos. And so that's what we were dealing with over there.
And nobody had any idea how difficult it was to move an organization from Brooklyn to upstate New York. So as far as the workers versus the patient load, what are you going to tell us on that?
It takes about 3 to 4 Bethel personnel to take care of one patient in the infirmary. And so if you think about it time-wise, you have a single person that needs to be taken care of 24/7, let's say. That person needs a morning shift brother, a day shift brother, and a night shift brother.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have support staff for them, which averages out to about one person that's support staff to one patient within the facility. So we had about 120 patients that were actually inside the 2 buildings. And then we had, I think, about 20 or 30 that were still living in Rivercrest apartments, living independently. We just brought them food, snacks, stuff like that, took them to the doctor when they needed transport. But when you look at the promise that Bethel originally gave all the Bethelites, it's like, hey, we have you for life. Like, you are here for life. They were expecting some sort of end to be here by then. They were not expecting to be in 2019 still having to take care of all these people, because if you had every Bethelite that was between, let's say, when you were there, like a 4,000 person system, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have that many infirmary personnel. Infirmary in and of itself has the capacity to kill the organization's budget. Like, it will eat all their resources, which is why they started sending people home so quickly.
Okay, so financially, this was a drag on the society, huh?
Yeah, huge drag on the society. And I remember there was a lady who was talking about it when I had just gotten to Bethel. I knew nothing. And she was going off while we were standing there folding clothes about how the infirmary has to change. Something has to happen, because that problem isn't going to go away. And if it doesn't go away, it's going to bankrupt them in and of itself.
Interesting. Who would have thought? Bankrupt. And then, because they had to have the proper equipment. So they had a big investment in that. And medical equipment is very expensive. And then to keep it up. Yeah.
You're hitting a soft topic for me, Barbara. I remember there was an older lady. She was 101 or 102. at the time I was there. I think it was my
Who
last year
was
there.
that? You don't remember?
I can't say because I'm about to tell you a few
Oh, you
medical
get
facts
sued.
about it.
Okay, we won't say that.
Yeah, no, I signed a HIPAA thing, so
Yeah,
I can't say any names.
no. We don't want to get involved with hip.
That's the question. Can a non-medical professional even be under HIPAA? That I don't know, but I'm going to respect it either way.
Well, the organization exists. The decisions they make falls under theocratic warfare.
I'm sorry. I forgot about.
You know,
You just forget the ridiculous things that are
so
said.
lying about the medical care is theocratic warfare.
Yeah. Lying about that actually did come up a few times. The only thing that got read more than Hebrews 6:10 was something about how we were fighting spiritual warfare. So, but that old lady, she was, yeah, I won't give any identifying marker. She was 101, 102, and she had a back problem, and so they had, instead of getting her a proper piece of equipment, had her in a wheelchair, and she had a big badonkadonk. She had a big butt, and so she couldn't sit properly in the chair because they put a pillow behind her back to ease the pain. The problem with that was when we went to go readjust her one evening, she fell out of the chair, just slid forward out of the seat, hit the floor, and died of some internal brain bleeding within the next 12 hours, all because they had an improper piece of equipment. I was livid over that one because that was completely unnecessary. She should have had a Jerry chair, which is a chair specifically made for that kind of situation. Yeah. And if she had that, she wouldn't have died like that.
See, this is the inside information when you run an organization that becomes an institution. I mean, there's plenty of big organizations, but they don't take care of people day and night. Food and medical care and all of that. And there were so many people that were living a long time when I left Bethel. There were a lot of people. I mean, even when I think back at the writing department, how many people were there, but they were up in age. So 30 years later, where are they? They ain't around anymore. They had to have medical care as an aged individual. So who was going to provide that? They were at Bethel, some of them 40 years, more than 40 years in the writing department. See, but if you have noticed, since there's not very much spiritual information in publications, right? There's not many publications, so they don't need even writers. They have writers on the outside. I did some writing when I was on the outside. So so they don't have to care for people. And with the advent of the computer, even in the construction engineering department, people were designing things from home. So I would imagine would you comment about that the expenses eventually went down? Do you know of any of experiences where they could cut corners and figured it out how to have less people there, because they did send a lot of people home.
I didn't know much about what happened in the upper echelons. I was always support staff the entire time I was there, but right before I went up there, they had a couple that they sent to my congregation in South Dallas, and they were upset, as they should be. They give 25 or 30 years to the organization, and then all of a sudden organization's like, hey, we have no place for you anymore because you're about to be a medical expense, and so we got to get rid of you. That was the big way that I saw them cut that infirmary bill that was upcoming. They just essentially defaulted on it, lied about what they were going to allow and how long they were going to allow people to be in the organization, and sent them home. The people that came to my hall down there they had no concept of how to live outside of Bethel structure. And every Bethelite I saw leave ended up in a same predicament. People who had gone in when they were 19, lived their entire lives in Bethel, get out, have no idea how to do anything.
20,
And
30 years at Bethel wasn't unusual. One of
Yeah.
them was one of the prime heads of the graphics when they cut the department down because they don't have this need for the graphics designers and artists because they don't put out much literature. So,
no.
so
And, you know, they have
Right.
so much literature that they're probably just going to have AI write everything in the future. You know, they got
Yes.
just insert the catalog and let AI do its thing.
That's right. Somebody's saying, I'm reading comments here. Many of the comments are very appreciative of what you're saying. We got one person, though, says, we have to take your word that the woman died because of the wrong equipment, considering that most of you have been caught out lying. How would we believe you?
Well, I hope I'm wrong, because in that situation, I was one of the patient care assistants that was helping her adjust. And so if she didn't die from that adjustment when she hit the floor, that would be a huge weight off of my heart, because, you know, when you mess up and then within a 12-hour period, somebody's dead because of your mess up, it weighs on you.
Surely.
So
Yes.
God, I hope you're right. I wish I was lying, but it's
Somebody else said that he's a troll. He wants it.
yeah.
But it was an interesting point of view, though, you know. And then they have the cemetery, so they just write out a death certificate, and the person goes to the cemetery, and no one knows they ever existed.
Yeah, and that was a hot button topic for some of the old timers that I was around, because you were only allowed to have, I think, 20 people at the cemetery at any given point in time. So there was a dear older brother who, this dude, as I was waking up, I swear he was Pimo, but he couldn't say anything because he was also like 95. And he would just tell me the realities of the terrors of Bethel constantly. And he would complain about how, like, his wife died and then they wouldn't let her have a proper funeral at the gravesite because they didn't want people coming around and taking pictures, or they didn't want too many people there trying to see the grave sites. And so for somebody that gave his entire life to the organization and to the order, and he can't even have a proper funeral for his wife, was heartbreaking for him.
So what would you consider the people looked upon? Not one overseer and not the governing body, but an overall impression that lives and breathes at Bethel, that people are dispensable. Isn't that true?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say depressed.
But for the sake of the kingdom.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. When we had basically... Brother Splain said that directly to our face one day. He didn't say those exact words. What was happening is we didn't have enough brothers to cover duty shifts where you had to do something on a weekend or late nights, like walking watchman or something like that. And he was meeting with all of us about it. And he's like, hey, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go and have y'all work extra duties, or whatever we called them at the time. I don't exactly remember. And when we all started kind of grumbling and complaining about it, he's like, well, hey, we'll just tell them that it's a privilege, and that it's a privilege to do extra work for the kingdom. And we all kind of looked at each other like, this man. That's when I lost respect for Splain. I loved Splain up until that point, because he had kind of fought for us on some things. But you give me extra work at night when I'm already working shifts, it's over. We are done.
Your opinions are welcome. They are welcome. And I have to agree with you because of 11 years spent. And I saw things nobody else saw because of the departments I worked in. I saw thievery. I saw decisions made that was so awful. One of the department heads, what he said would his remarks to the housekeepers were just so demeaning. And but they were good. There were wonderful
Absolutely.
people there too.
Absolutely.
So, but that's humans. I mean, it's a human organization that they try to make everybody think it's not a human organization. It's a God. It's better than it. So when you see the reality, what happens? You lose your belief, the faith in it. If they just wouldn't talk about all of this, the wonderful brotherhood, if they would just say, we are humans, you know.
It would go a million times better.
Yeah, actually, that's right. Somewhere along the line with Rutherford, of course, and nor didn't help matters with that attitude issue, you know. But anyway, it says, so we got this guy, Owen, who is causing me to look at the questions. And you know what, Owen? I'm not answering any more of this because we've got really good stuff to talk about. Well, when I say good stuff, interesting stuff.
Interesting.
And yes, and revealing. And that's what we're here for, because we're not enchanted with this organization. You know, we're disenchanted with what we saw. And we were believers, all of us, all the people that I interviewed, we would give in our lives for this organization. Of course, we said we would give it for God, but really we were giving it for an organization. And then some people had good experiences, and then there were those who had very bad experiences. Why are we picking on the bad ones? Because they outnumber the good ones, I think. So now you are a certified assistant, but you're getting you're getting a transfer into you're in laundry, infirmary, and then you're transferred to Patterson Furniture.
Right. Which was the best Bethel department ever, because we did not care.
Good.
We did not care. It was like being in Bethel without being in Bethel. It was so wonderful.
Oh, that's good to hear. And when you left, was that the last department that you were in?
No, the last department I was in was the Fishkill Medical Department.
Okay.
Which, yeah, that's the department that broke me. I was given. It seems like every department I went to, we were dealing with the hardest stuff at the time that a support staff member could be dealing with. So in laundry, it's like, hey, you have to deal with all of the complexes stuff. Congratulations. We get to furniture, and it's like, hey, we're setting up audio video department. We're setting up Mount Ebo, where they do a lot of their extra shooting. I don't know if they still own it, but at that point in time, they had us tear it down, put it back together, do a bunch of crazy stuff, move all of the service department to Walk Hill instead of being at Patterson. It was an insane time to be a part of that department. We work 6 days a week, every week, which is, you know, a no-no for Bethel, but all this AWS contributed to me going, I don't know if this is God's organization, so I'm not entirely mad about it. But then we get to Fishkill, and when I got there were only 13 PCAs in the whole building. So it was at its baby phase, and they were just bringing in people. And thank God nobody died the first year, because we were not equipped to handle what was going on, especially when it comes to the fact that you were bringing in Patterson people and Walk Hill people and Brooklyn people into the same department, and each medical department had its own training system. And so you were trained on the patients that were currently on the floor. So if there was somebody who had an issue that I wasn't aware of, I had no medical training about how to take care of it, which ended up being a huge problem, and almost got some people sent to their graves a bit earlier than they should have. The big one that always comes to mind is when it comes to catheter care, and like, trigger warning, this is very medical, icky issues.
Yeah.
So if you pass out easy, you might want to just mute for a second.
Yeah.
But there was a guy there were 2 patients from either Walk Hill or Brooklyn. I don't remember which one, but they both had catheters. Patterson had no catheter people. So I had no catheter training, no catheter experience,
Oh my goodness.
nothing. And they kind of throw us in there and say, hey, figure it out. And that's to kind of give them a pass. They did have a universal medical training system, but they wouldn't send old PCAs through it. So if you came in as a PCA from Patterson, you were considered trained up. That was it. And I almost got to universal training, but they're like, no, we need you on the floor. Get out there. And if you know anything about catheter care,
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, it's an issue of like there were some issues where somebody had a break in certain pieces of skin around the urinary tract, and so we had to ensure that thing was as clean as humanly possible, because if that got infected, it was going to cause a UTI and he was going to die.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an issue, so I just kind of did minimal cleanup. I did about 20% of what you need to do in a catheter care situation, and he got
urinary tract infection, UTI. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah, and it got to the point where when we actually got trained on how to take care of this brother's issue, I think he had already had 2 UTIs at that point. I'm surprised he didn't die, because he had a pretty bad issue.
Yeah, you become septic if it's not treated.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, I always say you don't die from a urinary tract infection directly.
Nope.
If it isn't taken care of, then you die from this becoming septic, or an infection spreads all over your body. And I gotta throw this in here. That's what C.T. Russell battled with. He had cystitis, and he talked about it a lot. And he was battling a UTI all the time. And so I learned a lot. I did a lot of reading on this. Mostly women get it. To just tell us about the ratio of the men to women technicians, or like what you.
Yeah, the PCA ratio was like 1 to 7. So 1 man for every 7 women. They had no problems finding women to come in and be PCAs. No brother wanted to be a PCA. I think they asked everybody who was available to move out of their department in the entirety of the Bethel system, and we were still short quite a number of brothers to step in. And the reason why you wanted brothers instead of sisters is they had a same-sex policy. So if you were a brother, you were going to take care of brothers. If you were a sister, you were going to take care of sisters. That way, no tomfoolery or honky whatever would be going on, which was kind, considering, you know, how strict you had to be in order to remain a Bethelite in good conscience.
Well, you got quite an education, and
I did.
Even a body in
because, you know, as crazy as that is, there were still times where I was taking care of female patients.
Is that right?
So I was like, all right, well, here we go.
What are you gonna do, you know?
But nothing. I remember the first, like, I'd never taken care of a female patient before, and I was training somebody else, and they said, hey, we need you to go and wash Sister so-and-so. I'm like, we're gonna wing it.
Oh my.
Like, don't actually follow this example, guys. This is how I think that you
with your eyes closed.
Basically.
And then they're old
like,
patients too. Yeah,
you know,
your best when you get old.
I remember I told somebody about the generalities of that situation. He's like, well, you know, I'm sorry that's the first female body you had seen. I'm like, that's all right. You know, that's what it is.
We can laugh at this, but it wasn't funny when it was going on.
No, but you know, I will take the that situation over trying to wash the male patients who are like 350 pounds of solid muscle, and every time we have to wash them, they're yelling that we're raping them. You know, you're just sitting there trying to shower them off, and they're like, rape. I'm like, no, brother, it's okay. We're just like, let
And
me
they got
you know, never
dementia
mind.
at the same time. They got
Yeah,
dementia and
yeah.
the problems. Are you really sane?
I don't know. I don't know. That's still in question. We'll see.
Oh my goodness. Um, you know, in the Bethel Infirmary, they came up with a new innovation after Dr. Dixon went. And he was there for years and years and years and years, and then finally he retired. So they came up with this new deal, and what they did was they had cubicles, big room, big room with full of cubicles, and everybody could hear what was discussed in the next cubicle. So you go in there with your problem, and they put in young guys like you, guys
Mhm.
like 18, 19 years old. And so here the sisters go in and they got problems and they got to talk to the guy and you can hear it, or you can hear somebody else's problem and everything. And yeah, it was like it was a nightmare. And so, and the guys were uncomfortable with this too. They said,
100%. Like they were bringing in new boys and putting them
they
in medical.
they were youngsters because they took them in at 19, so they were like in their early 20s, and many had no medical training or whatever. But I got I have never forgotten the feeling of trying to tell about a medical problem to a young stranger, or listening to the next cubicle what was going on. And
Yeah,
so,
no.
see, their religion. Why didn't they just stick with the religion? It's they tried to do it all, and did more.
You got to produce Watchtower. You got to produce literature.
Yeah.
It was more a media company than a religion.
So nowadays, since they're not the second largest publishing house in the world. They probably have, and all the older ones have died. So, and the people come in for a year, and then they tell them that they're just being borrowed from a year for a year from their home life or something. I mean, they don't have those issues now. Don't you wish you had stayed?
Nope. I don't know where I would have ended up if they. So the last patient I took care of, it's a couple that I dearly loved. Like, she became a kind of spiritual mom to me. If my spiritual mom was abusive, she was dealing with watching her husband die of a disease that normally kills people in 7 years, and he had survived it for 13 or 12 by the time I got in there. So she was dealing with all sorts of psychological blowback from watching him die slowly. And it was a situation where every time they put somebody in that room to take care of that couple, they would either get disfellowshipped or disassociate themselves or fade. Like, it was you want to kill a Bethelite? Put them in that room. And I think there was 5 or 6 of us from that specific situation that ended up leaving. But I kept walking up to oversight and asking, I'm like, guys, I can't take this anymore. Like, the insanity in that room. There's a lot of verbal abuse. There was a lot of psychological just turmoil of having to walk into that situation every day knowing that that's what was going to happen. I mean, there was one time we went on vacation with them and we got kidnapped, which is a story in and of itself. But when I said to my overseers, I'm like, hey, I'm done. You have to, like, give me a break. And they didn't. I was in there and I was fuming over that. And she snapped at me and I snapped back and I walked out, and that was it. I from a Bethel computer wrote all the things I needed to write. I didn't submit the disassociation letter, but I was fuming. Like, it's too much.
Too much. That's right. You reached a breaking point. I know.
Yeah.
There were certain things that I when I originally read your story, and it sounds like it's not a big deal. But talk about cutlery.
Oh, okay. So there was this. I was in furniture department, right? And so at this point in time, I was fully just sleepwalking my way, not understanding the reality of what Watchtower was. If you know the Patterson dining hall, it has two exits. One exit goes outside where there's some more chairs, and there's another exit that went down to our office for the furniture department. The seats for the outside dining area were like 50 or 60 yards further away than my office was. But the assistant overseer of the kitchen saw my furniture guys, take cutlery after we get our food down to our office, proceeds to reprimand us and say, you guys can't take a spoon out there. And I'm like, guys, we're fine. I'm like, why is this an issue? We bring them back. Like, we're good. Don't be this way. And then after he gets onto us for bringing that cutlery out, he then proceeds to write an email to the entire Bethel family, not my overseer, not my guys, the whole Bethel family, dictating, hey, y'all need to not take silverware out of that exit. You can only take it out of this exit. And everybody knew who was taking silverware out of that one exit. So when my entire department was put on blast in front of the entirety of Patterson Bethel, number one, I'm a guard dog. You attack my people, it's done. I'm coming after you. But I began to realize in that moment that policy was being dictated by men and not by Jehovah. And that was unacceptable.
Well, he's not a cutlery god, you know.
He's not a cutlery god, you know.
So he has other things to do.
Exactly.
So he appointed some people, but he appointed the wrong ones.
Yeah.
You know, we could make fun of this, but when you're in the middle of it, it is
I was hot.
Fun. Yeah.
I was so upset.
Mm-hmm. The small things can get you as big as the big things. And
we're working 6 days a week to make sure that you're taken care of. And you're going to come at my guys? No, you need to sit down and be quiet. That's unacceptable.
So the other issue, which I really appreciated in your story, so you had your life story on the internet.
I did.
Yes.
I took it down, but I should put it back up.
It was really fascinating because it shows a side of this religion that's not talked about, the operation of this worldwide religion, you know, and how they have to maneuver things to bypass civil law, even, you know. So, and the money issue to operate all this, and the medical department, the money they were spending money, as you said, like water, and so they had to do something about this. But we didn't leave the organization over this kind of stuff, because that's just human stuff, you know.
If it was this, that would have been a lot easier to deal with.
Well, yes. But you started looking at other things, and it's almost like you were so exhausted mentally, physically, from the foolishness of running these departments, that how it affected you all, and physically and mentally. And then like you mentioned about some of the old timers, or they were PMOs, you know, they were no longer believers, but they kept quiet. They had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And why bother anyway? When you don't have long on the face of this earth. So one of the things about your life experience at Bethel, to me, was fascinating. It was to do with your beard, and that's what we talked about before. To do with your beard. Why was this? Because you know, a lot of people want a beard. And they insist to get a beard, and they leave the Bethel. But your issue was an entirely different one, which believe me, I have heard of this before. And the allowance of some of the elders to have beards years ago is exactly what your situation was. So you want to share it?
Yeah. So I have a curl pattern issue where if I shave every day, it ends up curling underneath my skin, creating this large pocket of all sorts of wonderfully colored bioliquid, and then it'll eventually burst and spill out. So when we got the green light to wear beards, it was like, yes, let's go. I no longer have to deal with all of these bumps on my neck. And you'll see, like, if you know anybody who's half black and half white, most all of us have this issue where we're just growing our beard underneath our skin if we shave it down. I remember there was one day I was still in Patterson. I was taking somebody on a tour. And as we were walking through it, I saw at one point in a reflection, and there was blood just soaking my collar because a vein or an artery or something, some sort of major blood thing had been hit by a hair, and it was now just pouring blood onto my neck. And so I'm walking around with a white collar shirt and giving this tour with all this blood on my collar.
Blood, you can't take blood.
I can't take blood, it's not good. And so because of that, like when that article came out and I already talked to my overseers about it and we had already had the conversations and they still were like, no, I was peeved to the utmost degree. So, and when you go on AWS is adjusted work schedule in Bethel speak, you grow it out and you just don't care. And that's when I was put on reproof without an investigative committee when my elders saw that I had a beard. So I'm a Bethelite, essentially on reproof, without it ever having a discussion. But they're like, you have no privileges and don't get back on that stage. And I'm like, okay, like this is the cost, I'll pay it. But yeah, the beard caused a lot of trouble. Mainly because my parents, from the time I started growing a beard and they saw the type of issues I was having, they said, hey, you just need to grow your beard out. I was like, no, I want privileges. I want to go to Bethel. I want to be somebody. And as soon as I got the green light, I thought I had the green light.
Sure. See, if you go back in now, you fit.
Yeah, I saw some guys standing at the cart. That's like an hour away or a 20-minute walk away from my house. And every single one of them had beards.
Had a beard now. Whether they want it or not, they got to be in Bethel style. They got to be in style.
Is that it? Like I'm so far outside the loop of what Bethel is these days.
I don't know. It's a very strange thing. Psychologically, what happened to men when they were given the permission to have a beard, whether they want it or not, they're growing them. I give up. I don't know. But it's a big crisis in your life over a beard. So your world began to fall apart. And you were discussing it with all the elders and you were getting a reputation that you don't want to do at Bethel. Nope. No. So the time bomb started ticking.
Yep.
And so we see that this business at Fishgill, we talked about that, and we probably realized that they don't have those problems now. But
no, they fully switched over to a wellness center, so they are probably within their legal operation. I hope, because I don't want to. I could have came out and just started screaming the moment I got out about all of this. There are a lot of old people I don't want to see hurt through that entire process, and so God bless my mom, because I came out angry and she calmed me down after all of it. And there's old friends that I'd rather not be put into a situation where they're sent into a real nursing home, because it's not a good setup, but they keep the place clean. It's Bethel cleanliness in a nursing home. So there were benefits to it for them.
In a licensed nursing home that is worth its salt, everybody is respected for their ideas. And of course, you're dealing with older people that have issues with forgetting. And so the people who are on the staff have to understand all of that. So it's a different world as you became involved in. So everything there was though done by free labor. And did you ever think about that? The free labor?
Not while I was there. But
No.
when I left, I'm like, man, that's 5 wasted years of wish I was making a paycheck.
Okay. And so the what do you think was the biggest thing about and now I understand all of these issues, these human issues. They got issues everywhere. Every job, there's always something going on. But psychologically in Bethel, it's viewed differently because it's not over your pay scale, and your money.
Years of full-time service.
Yeah, yes. But it was a heavy mental and emotional load that you were carrying, but you were young. Young people, I ought to know because I was that once. You tend to look for perfection, or you make little things big. Your ideology is different than as you get older, the way you look at things. And so you, though, over these issues as a young person, is causing you to have a second look at the organization's beliefs.
Yeah.
How do you get from one to the other? That's what I'm trying.
When you realize that it's a bunch of men and not the Holy Spirit that's running the show, it is not a large step. And so I remember there was, I think it was the 2017 regional convention. They ended the convention on, I believe it's Daniel chapter 11 and 12. Mm-hmm. And I guess I had just never paid attention when we went over the Daniel book. I don't know if I was like 13 or what, but when they read both of those chapters, it was the most riveting thing I had ever read before in my entire life. I'm like, what is this 1,290 days? What is this 1,335 days? Is there, can we be working something out here? Like, I got real Bible conspiracy real quick. And so I began to look into that set of chapters, started cross-referencing it with Revelation, started cross-referencing it with Jesus' words on the Mount of Olives and the various Gospels, trying to figure out how they all fit together, and then taking what they said in the various books. So they would talk about in Daniel chapter 11 was talking about World War II, but the reference it makes back to itself in from 12:11 back to, I think it's 11:31. They would say that's talking about 1914, 1918. So they would say the same event from two different perspectives is two different events. And I'm like, well, that's obviously not right. So there was at this point in time, I was fully second shift AWS, working from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I would stay up every night until 2 p.m. To 10 p.m. And I'd stay up every night until 4 a.m. and study this continually. I'm like, I got to figure out what's going on here. This is so cool. And eventually it got to the point that I realized that the theological issue was 1914. And if I just pulled 1914 out, everything else fell into place. I didn't really know how to make everything else fall into place, but all the dominoes would just be perfectly played, and you didn't have to deal with this weird time stamp of an ideology that they had. So I went and I started telling everybody about this in my department because I didn't know.
You didn't.
I did.
It's because you were young. If you had been older, you knew to keep your mouth shut.
I didn't know there were certain elders in my first congregation that told me about that whole situation about the 1914, 1975, all that funness, but they never gave me the full context. And I had never been on an apostate website. So I had no idea that I was pushing like one of the biggest red buttons to say I'm an apostate possible. And I'm just blabbing my mouth to everybody about it. And eventually it got around.
Oh my goodness, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. And I go and I
I
try to
mean,
dip out.
listen, my experience at Bethel, if anybody did that, they were insane. You know, because it was like putting the red flag on the bull. You know, I mean, everybody's talking about you when you
Yep.
do things like that.
You get the classic, brother, wait on Jehovah. Brother, don't get ahead of the chariot. Brother, it'll be okay. We'll get there. The light gets brighter. You get all of the isms thrown at you real quick. But I am not a patient man. And so I was like, no, we're gonna figure this out. Like the only book that they haven't written about in forever is Ezekiel. So we know that's the next book. And then it was the next book. And I'm like, all right. They've fixed everything. And then we actually opened the Ezekiel book that they made. I'm like, this is fluff. This is all fluff. Why are they're watering everything down? And they have to, because if they get super precise and super technical, they're obviously making theological errors with every time that they do that. So they're like, we're just going to say a bunch of nothing. That way we don't have to deal with the issues.
But there's people on the outside that are reading this stuff and doing what you were doing. And that's why they don't do much of that anymore, because it doesn't work well for them. The letters start coming in.
I wish they would have done more stuff like they did with the commentary on James. Like I got my hands on one of those before I left. I'm like, this is fantastic. I like this. I haven't been over it again, so I don't know if it's worth its weight in salt. But
and then
that was,
and then they got rid of it. You couldn't even get a copy because it was too nice. Stop.
Yep.
If a disfellowship person had a flat tire when they were driving their car and you passed and saw it was fellowshipped, why not stop and help us?
Heresy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, sad.
It's very sad.
It affected people's lives. I think people in an institution who got their food and clothing and got everything provided and all they had to do was work and be obedient, they don't understand that this stuff that they put out affected your whole life. Your community was looking at you cross-eyed if you brought it up at Sunday. You out to lunch with a bunch of witnesses, and you're sitting there and they're talking about the Watchtower, and someone says, "I don't get that." Then they start talking, and you get marked. Marked. And then and your community falls apart, and everybody looks at you differently. Everybody who's hearing me knows exactly what we're saying because they've been through it.
Yeah. We've all been through that. I think I was reduced down to my immediate family were the only people that would talk to me out of my entire, I counted at one point, it probably was somewhere in the realm of 6,000 to 7,000 people between the people I knew in Texas and the people I knew from being in Bethel all over the country and all over the world. It was reduced to 5. And then in the midst of that, like, I don't want to get too much into this because this would take us into a crazy story, but then my mom dies immediately after we leave. And so it's reduced down to 4 because of the funness of COVID. So it's the amount of trauma you get from the fact that they're not really considering the damage that's done to lives because of that policy. And I don't know, I heard that they might have changed something with this fellowshipping thing, and I hope they have, but they need to get rid of that.
Yeah, they just changed the word removal.
Yeah,
just fellowship, hey, just remove them. Whoever thought that up thinks that everybody out here is crazy, dumb, illiterate. I don't know what they think anymore. So, they did it mainly to fool the governments, because Norway and
that what that was?
All this, that was the issue. There's fellowshipping children. So we don't just fellowship, we just remove them. And the court cases. See, you haven't kept up with all of the court cases and the issues. There's one in Norway in February. It's going to be all this similar issues. So and it's spreading. Denmark is also taking a second look at the Watchtower's treatment of its adherents. I never know what to call them anymore.
No,
So, but it's a human rights issue, and these countries are very, very into human rights. So that's a whole nother topic. I deal with that all often. This is bigger than anybody in the States realizes. So let's go back to your the faithful and the sea. I liked one point you said about 1914. You said, only one problem. 1914 was the foundation of all my beliefs. Remove 1914, and here's what else you have to remove. Got to remove Jesus being crowned king in 1914. And then you have a scripture. Satan being cast out of heaven in 1914. The governing body being given the role of faithful slave in 1918. There's not really a scripture for this one you wrote. And that the Gentile times had not ended yet. So you said that at this point, the only thing I had read was a Bible, and you started talking about this. So tell us what how Luke 21:8 fit in.
So Luke 21:8 was the kill shot and the final nail in the coffin. It basically says in the New World Translation, if anyone says, I am he and the due time is near, do not go after them. And the governing body had been saying the due time is near for forever, like way back pre-1914. I forget what 1976 was the first time that they discussed like an end times prophecy. But then I think it was 2012, they changed the understanding of the other sheep and another passage in scripture to where they went and said, hey, we are the faithful and discreet slave. Like, we are it. There is nobody but us. I am he. And I'm like, that's really like on point with what Jesus said in Luke 21:8. And so when you combine the fact that they're both saying like, hey, the due time is near and we are the only people representing God, I felt like that was what Jesus was warning us about in Luke chapter 21, verse 8. And so I, like, in good conscience, had no choice but to leave. No matter what I wanted to do, no matter what my opinions were, no matter how much I loved them, because truthfully, if they had fixed their theology, I remember saying to myself, like, if y'all will just change, I will follow you to hell and back. Please change. Don't be this way. Don't do this. I don't want to have to make this decision. But at the end of the day, it was the only decision that my well-trained Bible conscience could make.
So truthfully, you left over spiritual matters rather than the human issues of the daily life and cares of the world, and how that the Watchtower didn't address them correctly. All of that was just part of the unhappiness. But many people hang in there even though they're unhappy. But they don't really take a second look at what you did in 1914, or as you did with Luke 21.
Fun fact, when I took this all to an elder twice. The first time I took it to him, that was the first time I ever heard somebody admit how wrong we were, because his statement, to quote him, because I was talking about things in Revelation at that point. I'm like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And he looks at me and goes, Preston, I just simply choose not to think about these things anymore so that I can sleep at night. And when he said that, I knew we were in trouble, because if the men, and this was an anointed brother at one of the highest levels in Bethel, that said, I'm not even going to entertain the thoughts of correcting this theology. Like, well, there's no hope. We're cooked. Bad theology is the way. I guess this is what we're running.
So ignore your doubts is basically the
Yeah.
idea.
The second meeting that we had, I went through and I laid it all on the table. I'm like, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. We are wrong. And he pulled out I forget, it's Mark or something like that. I forget where the scripture is exactly, but he's like, where are you going to go?
Oh,
Where are
yeah.
you going to go?
That's what they say.
We have sayings of everlasting life. Where are you going to go? Like, I don't know, but it's not here. Jesus said, don't follow you guys. That's a problem.
Where are we going to go? They didn't even get their answer right. Russell was so confused that he had substitution and ransom mixed up together. His argument with Barber didn't hold water. The background was ridiculous when you're seeking out primitive Christianity. That's what they wanted to find out. But that's what you're in a religion for, to find out about God and what the belief is about God that's correct. And they want to shove that aside. Oh, I don't want to think about it. So what are you thinking about? The job as an elder. And then these people are bitter. Many aren't bitter. They just get used to it. It's a way of life. Well, I love the community. So you knew you were going to be disfellowship, but you disassociated.
Right. So in the midst of all of that, I dipped. I told some other stuff came up. When you sin in certain manners, you confess that to the elders as well. And so in that moment, I confessed some what they call self-abuse. And when I did that, plus taking the two things together in the same shepherding call, self-abuse and the fact that I didn't trust the governing body, as he put it. He's like, well, I think you were molested as a child, and this is why you're having issues with trusting the governing body and not able to keep sexually pure. So I want you to think about it, and I want you to tell me whenever you remember like who abused you, where they abused you, how they abused you, and we'll walk you through that. And I was so confused because I'm like, oh, my parents were strict. I didn't spend the night at anybody's house. If that happened, I don't think so. But I went and I called them like, hey, mom, dad, was I abused as a child? And they went, no, why in God's green earth would you ask that question? I'm like, well, I had a shepherding call and this and this happened. And then this was the outcome. So I'm just trying to work it out. And they're like, no, and we have no idea what's going on. And you're already out of Bethel. Now you're just living in New York. Get home as quickly as possible. So I packed up that week and left.
So when did you turn in your letter?
So that was late 2019. I stayed in my congregation in the south half of Dallas for the rest of 2019, and then the week that COVID lockdowns started up, I moved to Denver. That way I could just get away from everybody who knew me, take some time to think, indulge the wonders of the marijuana world in Denver. Not gonna lie about that. It was fun, but went through all of that.
Yeah.
So that I could figure out like, hey, am I really about to like officially end this part of my life?
Yeah.
And so after living in Colorado for 3 months or 6 months, I officially posted my disassociation letter on my Instagram, then called my elders, told them, hey, I'm out. They then had their judicial committee with me and said, Preston, please don't do this. One brother even said, if you do this, there's no coming back from this. And I believe he said that because I had already been accused of making apostate-like statements. They had already sent 2 investigative committees to question me about my concerns around 1914 and all the other things. I had lied my way out of that so as not to get disfellowshipped. But by the time I put in the letter and they're like, Preston, you can't undo this. Please don't do this. I'm like, it's already on my Instagram. There's no way out of it. Everybody knows I've already lost 200 followers. We're done here. We just end this meeting now. They're like, oh, all right, have a good life. And that was that.
Okay, so well, what do you think about your life right now? I understand that you got a very active mind.
Yes.
I can tell. And you ain't no dim me. You're no dim
I
me.
appreciate that.
Uh-huh. And you're like so many young people, especially, trying to find answers for life. And I know you're going to continue on doing this kind of thing, finding answers, because that's the type of person you are. And you love information and research, and the spiritual part of your life is still alive and well.
Absolutely.
And you're single. Hey, girls, he's single.
Anybody in DFW want to talk? That's where I'm located right now.
Wait, oh, and Fort Worth. That's what you said. Yeah. Hey, he's in Fort Worth. So you are an amazing person because you can express all of this well, and that's rare. It really is. We either hate the organization and we're mad and we talk about it like that, and but you can talk about any subject. Talking to you on the phone is very enjoyable, I have to say, and I would suggest other people try to talk to you on the phone because they will enjoy it. Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like Yvonne said, she says, "Glad you left the Watchtower." We are glad for you because now your world is going to open up. You're going to be able to, and you are. You're out 4 or 5 years. You're picking and choosing what you want in life, and not others making you choose what they like in life.
Exactly.
So,
And, one thing that I will say to anybody, number one, to anybody who's left the organization and still trying to heal from it, I had a lot of trauma afterwards because I was leaving in the midst of COVID about to start. And so it was like trauma on trauma on trauma. It took me about 4 years to heal from everything. And to any Bethelites who are leaving, you have to realize that Bethel bends your mind to a certain tribal way of living. Like, you have people around you all the time. You get very used to that. Our brains are built for that. And when that's taken away from you, even if you don't leave the organization, you're going to go through a type of withdrawal and a type of PTSD from losing such a tight-knit community that's going to take you a year or two to get over. So don't get mad at yourself because you can't get over things. I dreamt about Bethel every day for 3 years. And it was a mix of good dreams, bad dreams. I miss it. Oh no, badness. Nightmares. And I'd have dreams where it's just me and all my overseers hanging out. I don't have them anymore, thank God. But I do still have some lingering PTSD that a lot of people in my life remind me about right now.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I thought you had that. Mm-hmm.
Anybody in a position of authority over me, I have a tendency to kind of go off at. It's like, I'm going to go off on you before you go off on me, just because of how often the overseers in my life, whether it be an elder or a Bethel overseer, put the hammer down.
Yeah. People who are in the mental health business have a lot to say about these type of situations in cults. When you're raised in a cult, I wasn't raised in it. And
how old were you
when I
got in?
Witness, I was 14.
Okay.
I was an old lady, though. I was mentally out. My mother said I was an old lady. I was born an old lady. I was always thinking. But I had really had a very, very active life as a new witness. And because it was Long Island and knowing so many at headquarters, Long Island people, many of them were former Bethelites, and the congregations were Jamaica, Long Island, right there. That was the last congregation for years and years, and then it started going out to Long Island, new congregations, and so I saw the growth. But I have seen so much involved. Joe and I were involved in a extraordinary life as a witness, and but we made. Because I think we were very experienced, we made pretty good decisions. I think because we didn't end up really troubled. When we left that we survived it really well because we had a life before. We had still our house. We moved back into our home. We started our plumbing business, and see, because we had a life. And some of the Bethelites, even the couples that came in later after they had a family and successful businesses, they sold everything when they came to Bethel because they were going to stay. And you're shaking your head, yes, because you've talked to those. And they thought they were going to stay and die at Bethel or live into the new world from Bethel. And after a year, they were gone.
Yep.
And they had nowhere to go. And they had to start up the businesses. So the hatred, many of them had a hatred. Some sued the Watchtower and won over certain issues.
I remember signing that piece of paper stating I wouldn't sue them if they sent me home. That was such a confusing piece of paper. It was that, and then if I die, they had the right to dispose of my body. Back to back. It's like, whoa. What's going on here?
Well, it's all over now, and you've got a lifetime of analyzing all of this, analyzing your spirituality, and making decisions which way you want to go. Someone asked are you considering college?
Yeah, I'm considering going to study particle physics. So, fun fact that I would have been a particle physics in the particle physicist in the theoretical half, not the experimental half, if I hadn't gone to Bethel. But I chose the kingdom first.
Yes. Yeah, well, but you can say you did it.
Oh, 100%. Like there are so many lessons learned. Like if I had gone I'm going to go to college and be a witness route, I would still be in it. And it would be a semi-miserable life.
Working against the grain,
Yeah. And
there's not you. Yeah.
I talked to somebody who is still in it, who remained unnamed to protect the innocent and the guilty. But they said that the organization post-COVID is not the organization pre-COVID. And the organization post what was Silver Sword, what do they call that? The New Bible, the 2012, 2013 New World Translation is completely different from the organization pre-2012. And so we keep getting these iterations of their religion that get worse and worse and worse. And I'm just not trying to be a part of that. They're not getting better. They're rotting and decaying quickly, unfortunately. And then all of the stuff about the child abuse isn't helping.
Well, that's bringing them down. That reputation is. But in Europe, they don't have that's not the issue in Europe. Child abuse, unless you're talking about human rights abuses. That's a different thing, not sexual abuse. Especially in Eastern Europe, it's. I know what I'm saying because I'm dealing with something like that. So
I love that. Maverick's been giving Owen the hardest time. Make sure you record this as field service.
I'm reading this too, and I'm thinking
that's great.
I think Owen should go. Doesn't seem to be enjoying this, so I don't know why he's staying on, or he's just trying to cause us irritation. But you're not making me irritated, Owen. In fact, you're making me think. I'm glad I'm not like Owen. Silly. He's just being silly. Now, questions from the folk out there. Rick, thank you, Preston.
Absolutely.
And
my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we just
I'm thinking we have to hold Preston on here a little bit longer if we can. We got people who want to talk to him.
Yes. He's
Right,
ready.
perfect.
Yeah, with people, Preston, I have to tell you, really, really shocking. I'll tell you what really got my interest as I've been listening here about that woman that was an older woman that fell off the chair and died. That was, that's horrific. And, they covered that up big time, like you say. And then the other thing, they wanted us to be so honest when we were Jehovah's Witnesses. You really should do things according to Caesar's law. And many of us were so guilty. I can remember when I was a young man, bought a house, bought a new refrigerator. I wanted to have an ice maker. I could hook it up myself. But I said, gee, you're really not supposed to do it. You're supposed to get a plumber. So, because I figured I want to do things God's way. And all the things that we would do to satisfy our so-called Jehovah's Witness conscience. And yet at the same time, here they have a nursing home hidden away in an apartment complex. I mean, talk about violating the law. My goodness.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard from an ex-Bethelite 3 or 4 years ago about this when it was still in operation. And he gave me the details of it. I couldn't get over it. I thought, how in the world can you live with your conscience when to do that? The nurses couldn't even go into the building with their nursing outfits, so it wouldn't give a clue to anybody what was going on in the inside.
You should have seen how quickly we had to clean up and hide everything whenever somebody called an ambulance. I was like, okay, hide all the medicine, hide all the pills. There's no pill box. There's no nothing. We're just going to, hi, yes, come in EMT.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, let's open up the lines. If you'd like to say hello to Preston, he has been on here for a couple hours. He's been talking about his trek in the Watchtower. He was a Bethelite. Now, you are listening in on our radio network. You're on the telephone line. We'd love to hear from you. So go ahead. Why don't you hit *6, say hello to Preston, 414. You are on with us. Go ahead, 414.
Hi, Preston.
Hello.
From Milwaukee.
Say that one more time. I'm so sorry. I didn't get that. I heard from Milwaukee.
Hi, this is Rochelle from Milwaukee.
Hey, Rochelle.
Hey, I really enjoyed hearing your story, and I visited Bethel twice in 2006 and 2011. And I read Ray Francis' book, Christ the Conscience.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any way, I didn't hear you say anything, but do you do any like social media or email, or are you just off the radar?
Yeah, so I turned off all my social media. I recently turned it back on. It's more about what I'm doing in my new walk as a Christian and less about XJW stuff. So if that's something that you would be interested in, it's fun out there, not being under the restriction of the governing body and actually being able to think and operate freely.
Okay. Is it okay to look you up on Facebook?
Yeah, let me go ahead and give you my tag. On Facebook, it's under my personal one. So Facebook, I've been neglecting. I've done TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, but it should be under Preston P. Simmons, all one word, no spaces, or just Preston Simmons, and it'll be my face in black and white.
Okay. And just to let you know, so Preston E. Simmons. Okay, so I'll look you up. I'm Rochelle, and my my great grandmother's maiden name was Preston. So I
Okay.
Your name was Preston.
Nice.
Okay,
Love the synergy.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just saying, love the synergy in that.
Okay, I'll let someone else talk, but I'll send you a message on Facebook.
Absolutely, pleasure to meet you.
You might be relatives.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Preston. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. I think we got Susan. Susan, do you want to say something? Come on.
Yes, I was wondering, Preston's parents, how have they reacted towards his decision to leave the Watchtower?
Good question.
So my parents were both very, well, first they're like, okay, you're going to hell. We don't believe in hell, but you're definitely going there. When I came back and started talking about how 1914 wasn't real and our entire theology is absolute garbage. But after talking to them about it for a minute and walking them through it, they began to see my side of the story. And so they stopped associating with Jehovah's Witnesses sometime in 2021. My mom unfortunately passed away shortly thereafter from the Delta variant of COVID, but she was out and a free woman for a good few months of her life before passing away. And then my dad's just doing his thing, daring his elders to call them. Like he dares them, but they haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm. How about sisters, brothers?
Yeah, one brother, one sister, and they are no longer going to the Kingdom Hall. And then one sister she married a Walk Hill Bethelite. If I always said, I'm like, listen, little girl, if there's one thing as a Patterson Bethelite, I'm going to tell you never to do, it is do not marry a Walk Hill Bethelite. You can marry any other Bethelite. Do not marry a Walk Hill Bethelite. And she married a Walk Hill Bethelite, and she's still up there. So I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Walk Hill is the party boy central of.
That's what I was going to ask you. Why differentiate?
So they get disfellowshipped at a very, very high rate. So religious Preston, in his little JW mind, was like, "Nope, don't do it." I wish she had married somebody who would have been real enough to admit that this organization is not God's one true chosen people and get her out of it. But they're wanting to serve at what's the new place called? Ramapo? Are they still doing Ramapo, or is that?
Well, they say they are, and they once in a while they put a bulldozer on there just to satisfy the people who are because they got the permits, to keep the permit alive. Who knows?
So
I don't even think they know what they're going to do because they keep changing.
Probably not.
They're like the weather.
Yeah. So don't talk to my sister anymore, my older sister, but the rest of my family stopped going to the Kingdom Hall shortly after I got back. I was able to talk everybody through the theology of the thing.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we have Preston Simmons on with us. He's a former Jehovah's Witness. In fact, and he was a Bethelite. And he was willing to come on here tonight and share his story. And boy, some of the things he talked about here tonight were things we never heard before. So if you want to...
He's a recent ex-Bethelite.
Right.
We never get many people who want to talk about how the operation of the society in the last 10 years or so. So this is enlightening.
Everybody that I know who is PMO and a Bethelite is not coming out. Like they're staying in for some reason. I know of nobody else who is doing the same things that I did. I even have certain friends who, like, while we were all in it, they were on a level of buck wild that I just couldn't get down with. They had every religious book known to man, like every major religious book, including a Satanist Bible in Bethel. I'm like, dude, no, you're testing the spirit. Do not do that. Get it out. But he had it all, and I'm pretty sure that I don't know if that one friend is awake, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was. But there are so many people that reached out when I first posted this letter on XJW Reddit. I was like, yo, bro, glad to see you're awake. I'm awake too. I'm just not leaving. And so
because they get a place to live.
Although
we've got I believe that's Larry coming in from New Jersey. Larry, what do you want to say? What do you want to say to Preston?
I'm a former Bethelite. However, I did serve strictly at Brooklyn Bethel, and it was in the early 70s. And I guess there was one similarity between your story and my story. I guess we both fell out of the truth right when we were at Bethel. I wanted to ask about, your assignments up there and what the situation was, because the only thing I knew about the only thing I ever knew was, of course, regular, normal Brooklyn Bethel. I had absolutely no knowledge of upstate New York, except I knew we had a Watchtower farm up in Walk Hill, and then there was something in Patterson that is really nothing. But I guess obviously it's all changed. But what I wanted to ask is these. You were in the medical care business there. Just how many people were there, and who were these sick people? Or that is these very elderly and or sick people? How many were there, and exactly who were they? Were they strictly like elderly Bethelites from Brooklyn? Or sick Bethelites, or did they? So the society would take care of any of their own elderly and or sick, and that was your job up there. How many and who were they?
Yeah, so it was mainly the elderly that I took care of, and especially when I left Patterson Infirmary and went to Fishkill Infirmary, it was 99.9% people over the age of 75, 80. There were guys who were overseers from the kitchen. There were guys who were shoe repair people from Brooklyn. There were like people from the writing department. There were a number of branch overseers, so they were in some form of the branch committee that had issues that caused them to not have a sound mind, and they would be given room in the infirmary too. I think in Fishkill we had about 120 patients, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Those 120 patients were the dependents, and then I think we had 30 who lived outside of the normal infirmary world, who were independent. They just needed us to pick them up and take them to the doctor, and so they were more a transportation issue than an infirmary issue. But yeah, it was 120 of them. A lot of them were Brooklyn. A few of them were Walk Hill. There weren't too many Patterson. The Patterson people were usually people who had a brain injury that they couldn't just send back out into the world.
Oh.
So I see. So now, after Noor died, his widow lived on, Audrey, and I understand that more or less immediately after the death of Noor, Audrey was transferred up there, and I guess she was taking care of all the rest of her life into her old age. But maybe that was before you got there.
Yeah, no, there were only 2 governing body wives that I took care of, and I don't remember their names.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I can't. If you would say them, I would remember, but I don't. It's been 5 years that I've been trying to erase.
The point being, society did set up, I guess, what you'd call an old age home for
That's what it was.
witnesses, and but strictly those ones that were from Bethel or branches. That no private witnesses like from congregations or how about circuit or district overseers? No, it was just strictly Bethelites only.
So I think there were 2 circuit overseers or 2 district overseers that I took care of, but they had Bethel experience at some point. And then there were, off the top of my head, I can remember 3 missionaries from the Caribbean branch. We were responsible for retiring Caribbean missionaries as U.S. branch as well. So they wouldn't send them to the Puerto Rico branch or any of the Central American branch. They would come to us, and we would take care of them until they were done.
Well, Audrey married I think he was a fireman up at Walk Hill, Audrey Norr. And then she stayed there until he needed full-time care. So they brought him into Brooklyn. And so I worked with her in writing. And so it was about 91, I believe I worked with 90 maybe I worked with Audrey, and see they had full-time care 7 days a week and day and night, and they didn't have that at Walk Hill, so that's why they transferred him back to Brooklyn with him until he died, and then she went back there.
Yeah. Well, I always wonder what happened to her. Speaking of medical condition, when I was at Brooklyn Bethel, of course, we had Dr. Dixon, and he had his medical office set up strictly at the 124 building. It was a small little clinic with a couple 3 beds. That was the medical one. It was Dr. Dixon. Whatever happened, maybe you've answered it, but whatever happened to Dr. Dixon? And then I want to ask about the dentist, but first things first.
Dr. Dixon left the year we went in 82. And that's when they started bringing other doctors in. So he left because of age. And his brother, Russell Dixon, was in the writing department or writing correspondence.
Oh, okay. Now, when I was at Brooklyn Bethel, they had a dentist there, one dentist, and his name was Brother John Finocchio. And he did all the dental work for all the Bethelites at Brooklyn, and I guess even at the farm and so on. Whatever happened to him?
I remember that name, but I have no knowledge of what happened to him. But I remember he was there when we went in. So they brought in other younger dentists were there.
Mm-hmm.
And some
forget what his name is.
They didn't know what they were doing because they were new dentists. Some of the Bethelites had some major problems with medical care because some of these people that were volunteering to come in to Bethel, one of the doctors, a woman, she only came in there, and she admitted it. She only came to catch her husband, and she was not a good doctor at all. And same with the dentist. I had an infection in a front tooth, and because of what he did, filling crossing over to the next tooth, because he was so inexperienced and he drilled on. So that was a real big issue with.
We're gonna move on here. We got more callers and want to call in. Let's go to 540. 540. Come on.
I really enjoyed the guest, and I want to say to Brother Simmons, he may not know this, but Stanford University is free.
I will look into that. I need free these days.
I also heard there's one in Oklahoma that's free. There's a college, university. You work at the university. I can't think of the name of it now. I heard about it last week.
University of Oklahoma is good, but I just wanted him to know that if he's out of state, Stanford is free, and it leads in sciences and in physics.
Wow.
And so might to apply at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. They're doing great things in geospatial right now that's very in demand. I'm very impressed with you, and you've got time to have all the happiness in the world.
Yes.
And I think it's an expression we weren't allowed to use that I always use, and that's good luck.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Carry on.
Let's go to Chicago. We got Chicago. What do you have to say? Come on back in.
Enjoying this interview. When you said particle physics, I live in Illinois where the Fermi lab is, so that really perked my ears up. So I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to visit, but if not, you can definitely visit that. Well, my 2 questions are what inspired you to study particle physics, and then number two, how did you maintain your intellect in that intellectually stagnant environment that you were in?
All right, I got the first question is what inspired me to get into particle physics. I didn't get the second question, but I'll go ahead and answer the first one. It's actually really funny. I think I was reading Genesis 11, where it started talking about the Tower of Babel, and at one point in time, God said that there's nothing that men can do that they can't. That if they all had one language, that they couldn't achieve. And that inspired me to want to do things specifically in the astronautical engineering space, but astronautical engineering is very limited at this point. And so I wanted to get into whatever was going to push astronautical engineering and space travel specifically forward, and particle physics seemed to be the thing that would help move that dial forward. So I think I read all that when I was like 16, and that was the conclusion that I came to after discussing things with my mom.
Wow, that's amazing. My second question was just how you maintain your intellect and your curiosity in a very intellectually stagnant environment.
Rick or Barbara, did you get that, because it
I
keeps
did
cutting out
that.
at the end?
No. Mm-mm.
What he was asking is how you maintained your intellect while being in that organization. I mean, the field that you're pursuing
That's
obviously requires a lot of intelligence. So that's a question. Yes.
You argue with everyone. The problem with Jehovah's Witnesses is that anytime that I would bring up any of these subjects, because I was known as the guy that would always bring up a scientific topic, they would give me the Jehovah answer. I'm like, guys, how do y'all think like particles are actually moving? Like, and how does the wave particle duality work? And what is all of this? And they're like, well, Jehovah just made it that way. Just leave it alone. Jehovah made it that way. And I despised that answer with a passion. It's such a cop-out to just say God did it. If there are things to be discovered, let's say God did it like this, not God did it. And that's how I kept intellectually sound during the whole thing. And truthfully, having to battle with them on their own theology. Like, I love theology simply because it's an infinite game, while I feel like physics is more of a finite game. We're trying to nail something down, where theology is you have the entirety of scripture and your experience that you're putting together. And that's why I think guys like Isaac Newton, who studied both theology and physics in parallel, because one is a very right-brained thing with theology, and one is a very left-brained thing with physics. And if you combine those two things together, you end up with a juxtaposition in your mentality between those two, and that tension gives you a completely different outlook that I think we could use a lot more of in the world right now.
Preston, you just lost half the audience.
I'm so sorry.
I'm teasing you.
Thank you very much. And in the words of Pixie, good luck and carry on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, there you go. I have to tell you, Preston, you really made a big hit here tonight on the Six Queens. Lots of people were viewing you tonight on different platforms. I learned a lot. I'm sitting back here and saying, wow, I never knew. Even the ex-Bethelite Larry that called in, I never knew that they had this nursing home, so to speak, for all of these older Bethelites. That's fascinating to me. And how they tried to cover up those bums. Boy, I'll tell you, I mean, how can you need, when you're running a nursing facility or a hospital or anywhere that you're taking care of people, I can't see how you can operate under the radar screen. I mean, that almost is a dangerous situation in itself. You're scared to death to call an ambulance, and if you do, you want to clean up before they get there. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I bet some people lost a lot of sleep over that who were running the place.
Yeah.
Wow, that had to put the officials of the Watchtower on edge. I'm telling you. But the idea of you guys even speeding over speed bumps, and I mean, I can what the thing is here. I can fully understand why Bethelites run Renegade. Now I know that never happened to Barbara. I know she was straight. But I've had so
There
many.
wasn't anybody I wanted to run Renegade with.
Well, I'll tell you, we've had Bethelites call in here, and I've heard that story before. This organization drives people nuts. I mean, it really, really does. I don't know how people can remain sane in there. But you got out. You're a very intelligent guy. I can see that, Preston. And we're proud you came on.
You know it, yeah. Well,
Thank-
you need to get married and have some very intelligent kids.
Yeah,
I hope so. But thank y'all for having me on. Like I've been watching y'all's show for a little while, and then I dipped out to clear my mind, and it's been an honor to be on it.
Oh,
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Preston.
Yeah.
Barbara, I have to tell you, this was an amazing interview. You're getting better. Yeah, I mean,
Oh no, Rick! I've always been good. Now, come on.
you've always been good. I mean, I have to tell you, we were able to really see.
I thought you would. I really did. You all don't understand what we know, but we didn't know how to put it in words until we got Preston.
Well, I don't know what it is, as I said at the outset of our program. Well, whenever a Bethelite comes on, we had a man come in here, well, secretly. I don't think that Preston would know him. We just gave him a nickname. He's called Johnny the Bethelite.
Okay.
But he came on for 10 years, and he talked about a lot of the same horror stories you were talking about here tonight, Preston. And nobody believed him then. We're talking. This is back about 15 years ago. He came on, and he claimed he was still at Bethel, and he would go to a coffee house in Brooklyn. That's when they were still in Brooklyn, and he'd do the program. He had a program here on the 6 screens called Jehovah's Underground, and nobody believed him. In fact, we got a bad rap from it.
You did, yes.
They said this guy's not real. It's phony. Oh yeah. But he was the first one to really step out and talk from right in there. And he was taking a real risk. And he said he worked in the IT department. And he was telling us that those brothers were given jobs to monitor apostate sites. Mm-hmm. So he was given the job to monitor Facebook and the 6 screens of the Watchtower. And so he started listening in, and he started saying, man, these guys really have a big bone to pick. I'm kind of like in agreement with them. So he would call into the program all the time, and then we finally gave him his own program, and he came on for 10 years. And then the last time that he came on, he was talking about how the governing body was involved in, covering up child sex abuse and being involved in kiddie porn. And that's the last we ever heard from him. And some people on the program think he's deep into the Hudson River somewhere.
Yeah, I hope not.
He was the one that brought out about I think it was Tuxedo, about how poisoned the land was with chemicals from the company.
You're absolutely right.
And he had to go there, and he and other Bethelites had to clean the land. Remember that, Rick?
In fact, I heard you speaking about that earlier with Preston here about the contaminated land that was up there, basically at the Watchtower Farms. And what was happening up there is they were taken during it was illegal at the time, so I can't say the Watchtower was doing something illegal. But back in, I believe it was the 1980s or 70s, they were taking old, chemicals from Brooklyn.
Oh, that was from the printing. Ink.
The waste ink and the thinners and all of the mineral spirits and whatever they had to use to thin the ink. They would take it up to Watchtower Farms.
It was Wallkill, on the property on the Wallkill.
Yeah,
I know that whole story. I was involved with a lot of it.
They dumped it there. They buried it. And, it wasn't illegal at the time. I mean, it's totally illegal now. Mm-hmm. But he talked a lot about that. But it kind of brought back memories tonight when you came on. I don't want you to be a stranger, Preston. You come back and talk to us again, and we really appreciate you coming on. And Barbara, good job. You're doing your homework. Like I say, you're doing a good job, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for making it available to both of us, both Preston and myself.
Well, thank you. And we wish you all the best, Preston. You're a young man. There's no reason why you can't go on in life. And you said something, too, that caught my attention. even though you spent, was it 5 or 6 years there? And it really was, you really sacrificed a lot. You gave up good jobs, you gave up a lot of money, but you're the type of guy, you're going to take that and run with it. I can see that, your experience there is going to help you with your job commitments in the future. And we wish you all the best. And don't you ever change, Preston. You're a good man. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
All right, we're going to leave it here. We're going to take Barbara out. We're going to take Preston out. And that is a great program tonight. But friends, don't you go anywhere. You stay right here. We got JW World News coming up next. This is the weekend before Christmas. We are going to have our annual Christmas party right here tonight on the 6 screens. We'll talk a little bit about some news as well. But we're going to have some fun tonight. We can kind of just let ourselves loose. We can play some games, play some music. You got a chance to win some prizes. You guys like prizes, right? Well, we have a chance. You have a chance to do that tonight. Coming up next on our next program, JW World News. So we're going to end this one, and we will see you. Stay on this channel. Don't go anywhere. If you're listening in on radio network, if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube, stay right here because we got another program coming up in 2 minutes. Thank you.